The sound of his horse's labored breathing cut through the howling wind like a prayer. And Samuel York knew if he did not find shelter soon, both he and his mare would become permanent fixtures in these God-forsaken mountains. The blizzard had descended on the Sierra Nevada range without warning that February afternoon in 1876, transforming what should have been a routine cattle drive back to Rawhide into a fight for survival. Samuel pulled his hat lower against the stinging snow, his eyes scanning the treacherous pass for any sign of the trail markers he knew should be there, buried now beneath 2 feet of fresh powder. That was when he saw the splash of dark fabric against the white landscape, a shape that did not belong to the natural contours of rock and ice. He urged his horse forward, every instinct screaming that he should keep moving toward lower ground, but something about that motionless form made his chest tighten with urgency. As he drew closer, Samuel realized with growing horror that it was a person, a woman from the looks of her dress, collapsed in the snow with her dark hair spread around her like spilled ink. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots sinking deep into the drift as he rushed to her side. Her lips were blue, her skin pale as death itself, but when he pressed his fingers to her throat, he felt the faint flutter of a pulse. She was alive, barely. Samuel did not hesitate. He shrugged out of his heavy sheepskin coat, wrapping it around her slight frame, then lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, her body frighteningly cold even through his gloves. He settled her across his saddle, mounting behind her and pulling her back against his chest to share what warmth he could offer. The descent down the mountain pass was treacherous in the growing darkness, each step a gamble that could send them all plummeting over the edge. Samuel kept one arm locked around the unconscious woman, while the other guided his horse with practiced pressure and murmured words of encouragement. The wind shrieked around them like something alive and angry, tearing at his shirt and vest, but he gritted his teeth against the cold and kept moving. Hours passed in a blur of white and darkness. Samuel's arms ached from holding the woman steady, his body shaking with cold, but he refused to stop. He talked to keep himself alert, his voice rough against the wind. "Stay with me now, we are almost through the worst of it, just hold on a little longer." The woman stirred once, a small moan escaping her lips, and Samuel felt a surge of hope. "That is right, you fight. Don't you dare give up on me." By the time the lights of Rawhide flickered into view through the snow, Samuel could barely feel his hands. The storm had followed them down from the mountains, blanketing the town in a thick white curtain. He guided his horse straight to Dr. Harrison's house on the edge of town, sliding from the saddle with the woman clutched against his chest. He kicked at the door with his boot, too cold and exhausted for any pretense of manners. "Doc, open up. I have got someone who needs help." The door swung open to reveal Dr. Marcus Harrison, a grizzled man in his 50s with sharp eyes and steady hands. He took one look at Samuel and his burden and stepped aside. "Get her inside, quickly now." The warmth of the house hit Samuel like a physical blow, making his frozen skin burn with renewed sensation. He carried the woman to the examination table that Doc kept in his front room, laying her down with a gentleness that surprised him. Now in the lamplight, he could see her more clearly. She appeared to be in her early 20s, with delicate features and olive-toned skin that spoke of mixed heritage. Her dress was of good quality but torn in places, as though she had been running through rough terrain. What happened? Doc asked, already working to remove Samuel's coat from around her, found her in the mountain pass. She was just lying there in the snow, half frozen. Samuel stepped back to give the doctor room to work, his legs suddenly unsteady beneath him. "You look about ready to collapse yourself," Doc observed, sparing him a glance. "There is coffee on the stove. Pour yourself some and sit down before you fall down." Samuel wanted to argue, but his body had other ideas. He made it to the kitchen, poured a cup of coffee with shaking hands, and collapsed into a chair. The heat from the stove slowly seeped into his bones as he listened to Doc working in the other room, calling out orders to his wife Martha, who had appeared in her nightgown to help. Time became fluid again. Samuel must have dozed because the next thing he knew, Martha was shaking his shoulder gently. "She is going to make it, thanks to you." Marcus says another hour in that cold and she would have been beyond saving. Relief flooded through Samuel so intensely it left him weak. Is she awake? Not yet. Her body needs time to recover from the ordeal. You should go home, get some rest yourself. But Samuel found himself reluctant to leave. What if she wakes up scared? She will not know where she is. Martha's eyes softened with understanding. Then you best make yourself comfortable. I will bring you some blankets. The night stretched long and quiet, broken only by the howl of wind outside and the occasional crack of shifting logs in the fireplace. Samuel dozed in fits and starts, always jerking awake to check that the woman was still breathing. Doc had moved her to the spare bedroom, tucking her under layers of quilts with heated stones wrapped in cloth placed around her to restore warmth gradually. Dawn was breaking gray and cold over the mountains when Samuel heard a soft gasp from the bedroom. He was on his feet and through the door before conscious thought caught up with action. The woman's eyes were open, wide and dark, and filled with confusion and fear. She tried to sit up, her movements frantic and uncoordinated. "Easy now," Samuel said, keeping his voice low and calm as he would with a spooked horse. "You are safe. This is Dr. Harrison's house in Rawhide." She stared at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "Who are you?" "Name is Samuel York. I found you up in the pass last night in the storm. Do you remember what happened?" Her brow furrowed as she clearly tried to sort through fragmented memories. "The stagecoach. There was an accident. We hit something in the snow and overturned. I remember crawling out, trying to find help, but it was so cold." Her voice broke. "The driver and the other passengers, are they here too?" Samuel's stomach sank. "You were alone when I found you. How many others were there?" "4 of us, including the driver." Her hand gripped the quilt. "We have to go back. They might still be alive." Doc Harrison appeared in the doorway, Martha close behind. "Young lady, you are in no condition to go anywhere, and this storm has been raging all night. Samuel barely made it down with you as it was, but they could be dying up there." The woman tried to push herself up again, and this time Samuel moved closer, his hands hovering near her shoulders in case she collapsed. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "The pass is completely snowed in right now. Trying to get back up there would be suicide. But as soon as this storm breaks, I will gather some men and we will search for your stagecoach. I give you my word." She searched his face as though trying to determine if she could trust him. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she finally nodded, sinking back against the pillows. "I am Zelda Garrison. I was traveling from Carson City to meet my uncle in California." "Well, Miss Garrison, you are alive because you are a fighter. Doc says you were mighty close to freezing to death. Because of you," she said quietly, "you saved my life." Samuel felt heat rise in his cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. "Anyone would have done the same, but you are the one who did." Her dark eyes held his, and something passed between them in that moment, some recognition that neither quite understood yet. The storm finally broke late the following afternoon. Samuel had spent the intervening time resting, eating, and preparing for the search mission. Zelda had recovered enough to sit up and take some broth, though Doc insisted she remain in bed. Samuel could feel her eyes following him each time he checked in, a weight that was not entirely uncomfortable. He gathered 6 men from town, all experienced in mountain rescue, and they set out at first light the next morning with extra horses and supplies. The search took most of the day. The pass had been transformed into an alien landscape of white, familiar landmarks buried or disguised. It was Samuel who finally spotted the dark shape of the overturned stagecoach, half buried in a drift against the rock face. They found 3 bodies. The driver and 2 male passengers had succumbed to the cold, huddled together in a futile attempt to share warmth. Samuel felt a heavy weight settle in his chest as they loaded the frozen corpses onto the pack horses. Zelda had been the only survivor, and only because she had been brave or desperate enough to venture out into the storm searching for help. The ride back to Rawhide was somber. They delivered the bodies to the undertaker, and Samuel went straight to Doc's house. Zelda was in the parlor this time, dressed in a borrowed dress from Martha, her hair braided over one shoulder. She looked up when he entered, hope and dread warring in her expression. "I am sorry," Samuel said, removing his hat. "We were too late for the others." The color drained from her face. All of them. Yes, madam, I am real sorry. She nodded slowly, her hands twisting in her lap. I knew, I think, when I woke up here and they were not with me, but I hoped. A single tear tracked down her cheek. I did not know them well. We were just strangers sharing a journey, but they did not deserve to die like that. Samuel crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, a boldness he would not normally have presumed, but something about her grief called to him. You did everything you could. You went for help. That took real courage. It was not enough, though, was it? She looked at him then, her eyes swimming with tears. They are dead and I am alive, and I do not understand why. Because you were strong enough to keep fighting. Because you didn't give up. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Her fingers were small and delicate in his calloused palm. And because I happened to be riding that pass at exactly the right moment. Maybe it was fate or providence or just blind luck. But you are here, and that matters. She turned her hand in his, gripping tight. Thank you, Samuel, for everything. He stayed there beside her as the afternoon light faded, neither of them speaking much, just taking comfort in the presence of another living soul who understood something of what the mountain had taken and given back. The days that followed established a rhythm. Zelda was staying at the boarding house now, her passage to California delayed while she recovered her strength and waited for the mountain passes to clear more reliably. Samuel found reasons to be in town more often than his ranch work strictly required, stopping by to check on her under the pretense of seeing if she needed anything. The truth was, he could not stop thinking about her. It was more than just the dramatic circumstances of their meeting. There was something about Zelda Garrison that drew him like a lodestone, something in the intelligent light in her eyes and the determined set of her chin. She had a quick wit and a ready laugh, and she did not seem to mind his rough manners or the fact that his hands were work-worn, and his education came more from experience than books. Zelda, for her part, found herself watching for Samuel's visits with an anticipation that surprised her. She had grown up in Carson City, the daughter of a successful merchant and his Spanish wife who had died when Zelda was 12. Her father had passed the previous year, leaving her with enough inheritance to be independent but not enough to be truly wealthy. The plan had been to live with her uncle and his family in Sacramento, to start fresh in a place not haunted by loss. But Rawhide was growing on her. It was rough and unpolished, but there was an honesty to the place and its people. And there was Samuel, with his quiet strength and kind eyes, who had literally saved her life and then stayed beside her as she grieved for strangers. One afternoon, about a week after the rescue, Samuel worked up the courage to ask her to join him for a walk. The weather had turned almost spring-like in the way of mountain towns, the sun bright and warm even if the shadows still held winter's chill. Zelda accepted with a smile that made his heart kick against his ribs like a green broke horse. They walked along the edge of town, where Rawhide gave way to open land dotted with sagebrush and juniper. Samuel pointed out the direction of his ranch, about 5 miles north of town. Not much to look at yet. I have been building it up for 3 years now, since I was 22. Got about 200 head of cattle and a house that is still more cabin than anything else, but it is mine, free and clear. That must be a good feeling, Zelda said, shading her eyes to look in the direction he indicated. To have something that belongs to you that you built with your own hands. It is, though it can get lonely sometimes. He glanced at her sidelong. I lost my folks to fever when I was 19, got a sister back in Missouri, married with kids of her own now. But out here, it is mostly just me and my foreman, old Charlie, who has been cowboying since before I was born. I understand loneliness, Zelda said softly. After my mother died, my father threw himself into his business. We lived in the same house, but I barely saw him. When he passed, I realized I had been alone long before he was actually gone. Samuel stopped walking, turning to face her fully. I am not good with fancy words, Miss Garrison, but I want you to know that you do not have to be alone now. I mean, if you wanted, you could stay here in Rawhide. I know your plans were to go to California, and I would never presume to ask you to change them for someone like me. But I wanted you to know that there are people here who would be happy if you stayed. I would be happy. Zelda looked up at him, her heart suddenly racing. Are you saying what I think you are saying, Samuel York? He reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle despite the strength she could feel in his fingers. I am saying that I have never met anyone like you. I am saying that every time I ride away from town, all I can think about is when I can ride back. I am saying that I know it has only been a week, and you probably think I am crazy, but I feel like I have been waiting my whole life to find you in that mountain pass. You are not crazy, Zelda whispered. Or if you are, then so am I. Because I feel it too, this pull between us, like we are two pieces of something that was always meant to fit together. Samuel lifted his other hand to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin with a tenderness that made her breath catch. I would like to court you proper if you will have me. Take the time to do this right. I would like that very much. He kissed her then, soft and sweet in the fading afternoon light, and Zelda felt something in her chest unfold like a flower opening to the sun. This was not what she had planned when she boarded that stagecoach in Carson City. But standing here with Samuel's arms around her and the vast Nevada sky overhead, she could not imagine wanting to be anywhere else. The courtship that followed was the talk of Rawhide. Samuel York, who had always been so serious and focused on building his ranch, was suddenly seen smiling more, his whole face lighting up whenever Zelda Garrison appeared. And Zelda, who had arrived in town half frozen and traumatized, blossomed under his attention like the wildflowers that began to dot the landscape as winter gave way to spring. Samuel took her on rides through the countryside, showing her the land he loved with such fierce pride. He taught her to see beauty in things she had never noticed before. The way morning light painted the mountains gold, the intricate architecture of a bird's nest, the tough resilience of sage that could survive in the harshest conditions. Zelda, in turn, brought culture and refinement to Samuel's world. She had been educated by a governess and could quote poetry, speak fluent Spanish, and play the piano with skill. She performed at church socials and taught Sunday school to the children, quickly becoming a beloved figure in the community. But it was in the quiet moments between them that their connection deepened most profoundly. They would sit on the porch of the boarding house in the evenings, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Samuel told her about his dreams for the ranch, his hope to build something lasting that could support a family. Zelda shared her fears about never really belonging anywhere, about always feeling caught between her American father's world and her mother's Spanish heritage. You belong here, Samuel told her one evening in early April, about 2 months after he had found her. You belong with me. I know that as sure as I know my own name. I feel it too, Zelda admitted. But Samuel, are we moving too fast? People in town are already talking about when we might get married, and we have only been courting for such a short time. Does it feel too fast to you? He asked seriously. She thought about it, really considered the question. No, it feels like coming home. Then everyone else can mind their own business, he grinned at her. Besides, out here, sometimes you have to move fast. The land does not wait around for people to make up their minds. Is that your roundabout way of proposing, Samuel York? His expression turned suddenly serious. No, madam, when I propose, there will not be any question about it. He stood up from the porch steps where they had been sitting. But I think it is time you saw the ranch, really saw it. Will you come out this Sunday? Let me show you what your life could be like if you chose to share it with me. Zelda's heart hammered in her chest. This felt like more than just an invitation for a visit. This felt like standing at a crossroads, the moment where she would have to decide what her future would hold. Yes, I will come. Sunday dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect spring day that seemed designed for new beginnings. Samuel arrived at the boarding house driving a wagon rather than riding his horse, and he had cleaned up in a way that made Zelda bite back a smile. His hair was slicked back, his jaw freshly shaved, and he wore what was clearly his best shirt, the one without any patches or frayed cuffs. You look very handsome, she told him as he helped her up onto the wagon seat, and you look beautiful, but then you always do. The compliment was delivered with such straightforward honesty that Zelda felt warmth flood her cheeks. The drive to the ranch took about an hour, following a rough track that wound through rolling hills dotted with cattle. Samuel pointed out landmarks and boundaries, explaining how he had slowly been buying up parcels of land from homesteaders who had given up on making a go of it in the harsh Nevada climate. "That is my dream," he said, gesturing to the landscape around them. "To build one of the biggest and most successful ranches in the territory. Not because I want to be rich or important, but because I want to create something lasting. Something I can pass down to my children and they can pass down to theirs." "That is a fine dream," Zelda said softly. "It is a lonely dream, though, if there is no one to share it with." He glanced at her, his expression vulnerable in a way she had not seen before. "I want a partner, Zelda, someone who will build this life with me, not just live in it." Before she could respond, they crested a rise and the ranch house came into view. It was modest, as Samuel had warned, but solidly built of logs and stone. A porch wrapped around the front, and she could see where someone had started flower beds, though they were currently empty. Behind the house stood a barn, a chicken coop, and several other outbuildings. An older man emerged from the barn as they pulled up, wiping his hands on his pants. This would be Charlie, Samuel's foreman. He had a weathered face and sharp blue eyes that assessed Zelda with the thoroughness of someone evaluating livestock. "So this is the famous Miss Garrison," Charlie said, a hint of amusement in his gravelly voice. "Boy has not shut up about you for 2 months." "Charlie," Samuel warned, but there was no heat in it. "Pleased to meet you, sir," Zelda said, accepting his help down from the wagon since Samuel had already jumped down and was reaching for a basket from the back. "No need to sir me, miss, just Charlie is fine." He shot Samuel a meaningful look. "I will make myself scarce, got some fences to check up on the north pasture." "Those fences were fine yesterday," Samuel protested. "Well, you know how it is, things change." Charlie was already heading toward the barn with a swagger that suggested he was thoroughly enjoying himself. Samuel shook his head, then turned to Zelda with the basket in hand. "I thought we could have a picnic. There is a spot up by the creek that is real pretty this time of year. But first, would you like to see the house?" She absolutely would. Samuel led her inside, and Zelda tried to see the space through his eyes rather than judging it by the standards of her father's well-appointed home in Carson City. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room all in one, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. The furniture was rough but functional, clearly built by hand. A ladder led up to a loft sleeping area, and a door on the far wall presumably led to another room. "That is what I hope will be a proper bedroom someday," Samuel explained, following her gaze. "Right now it is mostly storage, but if there was a wife, I would finish it properly. Put in a real bed, maybe some nice curtains, whatever would make her happy." Zelda walked slowly around the space, trailing her fingers along the rough-hewn table, pausing to look at the few decorations Samuel had. A photograph of a stern-looking couple who must be his parents, a bundle of dried herbs hanging from a beam, a battered book of cowboy poetry on the mantel. "It is honest," she said finally. "It is a home built by someone who values substance over show. I like it, Samuel. I like it very much." The relief on his face was almost comical. Yeah, she turned to him with a smile. "Now show me this creek you have been promising." They walked out behind the house, following a worn path through new grass that sparkled with morning dew. The creek was more substantial than Zelda had expected, running clear and cold with snowmelt from the mountains. Cottonwood trees lined the banks, their leaves just beginning to bud out in bright green. Samuel spread a blanket in the shade and unpacked the basket, revealing fried chicken, fresh bread, cheese, and a jar of preserved peaches. "Martha at the boarding house helped me put this together. I am a decent hand with trail food, but this required a woman's touch." They ate and talked, the conversation flowing as easily as the water beside them. Samuel told her about the first winter on the ranch, when he had nearly frozen in the half-finished cabin and survived on little more than beans and determination. Zelda shared memories of her mother, stories she had not told anyone in years about learning to make tortillas in their kitchen and the Spanish lullabies that still echoed in her dreams. "Do you think she would approve of me?" Samuel asked. "Your mother, I mean." Zelda considered the question seriously. She always told me to marry a man with strong hands and a stronger heart, someone who would protect his family but also respect them. I think she would have liked you very much. I wish I could have met her, and your father too." "My father would have been harder to win over," Zelda admitted. "He had ideas about me marrying well, someone established in business. A cowboy rancher would not have been his first choice. But would it have been yours?" Samuel's eyes searched her face. Setting aside what he wanted, "What do you want, Zelda?" This was it, she realized. The real question that had been building between them since that night in the mountain pass. She set down the chicken leg she had been holding and wiped her hands carefully on her napkin, gathering her courage. "I want a life that is real," she said finally. "Not comfortable and stifling like it would have been with the banker's son my father was always pushing at me. Not lonely like it would be living with my uncle's family, always the poor relation dependent on their charity. I want a partner who sees me as an equal, who values my mind as much as my ability to keep a house. I want children raised with love and laughter, taught to be strong and kind. I want to wake up every morning grateful for the life I am living." Samuel had gone very still, his eyes locked on her face. "And could you have that here, with me?" "I think I could have exactly that here with you." She reached out and took his hand. "If you are asking me to marry you, Samuel York, then my answer is yes." For a moment he just stared at her, as though he could not quite believe what he had heard. Then suddenly he was on his feet, pulling her up with him, his hands framing her face as he kissed her with a passion that stole her breath. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Samuel pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Zelda Garrison. I know I should have said it more romantic-like with the proposal and everything, but I cannot hold it in anymore. I have loved you since I wrapped you in my coat and felt you breathing against my chest. I have loved you in every moment since, and I will love you for every moment I have left in this life." Tears streamed down Zelda's cheeks, but she was smiling so wide it almost hurt. "I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes, how fast and how completely I fell for you." They held each other there by the creek, the Nevada sun warm on their backs and the sound of water providing a soundtrack to the promises they whispered. They talked about the future, about the wedding they would plan, about the children they hoped to have and the life they would build together. "I want to do this right," Samuel said eventually. "I want to marry you properly, in the church with the whole town there. And I want to have time to finish that bedroom, make the house ready for you." "How long are you thinking?" Zelda asked, playing with the buttons on his shirt. "A month, is that too soon? Or would you rather wait until fall?" "A month is perfect. Any longer and I might lose my nerve." He laughed and kissed the top of her head. "You are the bravest person I know, but I understand what you mean. Now that I know you are going to be my wife, I do not want to wait any longer than necessary." The month that followed was a whirlwind of activity. Zelda had expected some resistance from the town, some whispers about the speed of their engagement or questions about propriety. But the people of Rawhide had watched their courtship unfold, had seen the genuine affection between them, and had apparently decided that Samuel York and Zelda Garrison were meant to be. The women of the town rallied around Zelda, helping her sew a wedding dress from fabric ordered specially from Carson City. It was not grand by city standards, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. White cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, fitted at the waist and full in the skirt. Zelda spent hours in the boarding house parlor with Martha and the other ladies, stitching and talking and laughing in a way she had not experienced since her mother died. Meanwhile, Samuel worked like a man possessed to finish the bedroom and make other improvements to the house. Charlie helped, grumbling good-naturedly about fools in love while building a beautiful headboard for the new beds Samuel had ordered from town. They painted the walls, installed proper windows with glass instead of just shutters, and even built a real kitchen cabinet to replace the rough shelves Samuel had been using. They saw each other regularly, but always with others present, maintaining propriety even as they counted down the days until they would be husband and wife. Samuel would ride into town in the evenings and sit with Zelda on the boarding house porch, holding her hand and talking about the future until the stars came out. "Only 2 more weeks," he said one night, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "Then you will be Mrs. Samuel York." I keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a dream, Zelda admitted. That I am still lost in that blizzard, and my mind made you up to keep me from giving up. I am real. This is real. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. And in 2 weeks, I am going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, as though even the Nevada sky wanted to bless their union. The church was packed with nearly every resident of Rawhide and several neighboring ranchers who knew Samuel. Zelda stood in the back room with Martha, taking deep breaths to calm her racing heart. "You look beautiful, dear," Martha said, adjusting Zelda's veil one final time. "That boy out there is the luckiest man alive." "I am the lucky one," Zelda corrected softly. "He saved my life, and now he is giving me a reason to live it fully." The music started, the simple notes of a piano played by Mrs. Chen from the general store. Martha gave Zelda's hand a final squeeze and then went to take her seat. Zelda stood alone for a moment, gathering her courage. She had no father to walk her down the aisle, no family at all in attendance. But as she stepped through the door into the chapel proper, she saw Samuel standing at the altar in a new suit, his face shining with love and wonder, and she knew she had all the family she needed right there. She walked down the aisle to him, keeping her eyes locked on his, a smile growing on her face that matched the one spreading across his. When she reached him, he took both her hands in his, squeezing gently. "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," he whispered, for her ears only. Reverend Thomas cleared his throat and began the ceremony. Zelda heard the words as though from a great distance, too focused on Samuel's face, on the way he looked at her like she was the answer to every prayer he had ever prayed. When it came time for the vows, Samuel's voice rang out clear and strong. "I, Samuel Benjamin York, take you, Zelda Maria Garrison, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, protect you, and cherish you all the days of my life. I promise to be your partner in building our life together, to listen when you speak, and to value your wisdom. I promise to give you the home and family you deserve, and to spend every day trying to be worthy of the gift of your love." Zelda's eyes blurred with tears as she spoke her own vows, her voice shaking slightly with emotion but never wavering. "I, Zelda Maria Garrison, take you, Samuel Benjamin York, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, support you, and stand beside you all the days of my life. I promise to be your partner in all things, to build our ranch and our family with you. I promise to be brave enough to follow you into any storm, knowing you will always bring me home safe." Samuel's eyes glistened suspiciously as he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, a ring that had belonged to his mother. Zelda placed a matching band on his hand, feeling the significance of the moment settle over her like a warm cloak. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thomas declared with a smile. "Samuel, you may kiss your bride." And he did, tenderly at first and then with growing confidence as the church erupted in cheers and applause. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and blushing, Samuel tucked Zelda's hand into the crook of his arm and led her back down the aisle as man and wife. The reception was held at the town hall, with long tables laden with food that everyone had contributed. There was dancing and music, toasts and laughter. Charlie cornered Zelda at one point, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You take care of that boy," he said gruffly. "He has been through enough hard times. He deserves some happiness." "I will," Zelda promised. "And you will still come around, will you not? You are family to him, which means you are family to me now too." Charlie cleared his throat roughly and looked away, but not before she saw the emotion on his weathered face. "Reckon I can do that. Someone needs to make sure he does not work himself to death trying to impress you." As the afternoon wore on and the sun began to set, Samuel leaned close to Zelda. "Ready to go home, Mrs. York?" The title sent a thrill through her. "More than ready, Mr. York." They said their goodbyes and made their way to the wagon, which someone had decorated with ribbons and tin cans. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both of them lost in thought, hands clasped between them on the seat. The nervousness Zelda had expected to feel was absent, replaced by a sense of rightness of coming home. The house looked welcoming in the twilight, lamplight glowing through the new windows. Samuel helped Zelda down from the wagon, then surprised her by sweeping her up into his arms. She laughed and wrapped her arms around his neck as he carried her over the threshold. "Welcome home," he said softly, setting her down gently in the middle of their main room. Zelda looked around at the space that was now hers, seeing the touches Samuel had added. Wildflowers in a jar on the table, her favorite quilt from the boarding house draped over the back of his chair, small things that showed he had been thinking of her. She turned back to him, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "Take me to bed, husband." The words sent visible shiver through him. He kissed her deeply, then led her to the bedroom he had worked so hard to finish. It was simple but lovely, with the handmade headboard Charlie had crafted, clean white linens on the bed, and curtains that softened the windows. Samuel lit a lamp, the warm glow filling the space. What followed was tender and sweet, and occasionally awkward in the way of first times, but filled with so much love and trust that those moments only brought them closer. They learned each other slowly, with whispered endearments and gentle touches, building a new intimacy that went beyond the physical. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Zelda's head on Samuel's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too." His hand stroked through her hair, the gesture soothing and possessive all at once. "Thank you for taking a chance on a rough cowboy and his half-built dream. Thank you for finding me in that storm." She pressed a kiss to his chest. "Thank you for not giving up, for riding through the night to save me." "I would ride through 100 storms for you." He tilted her face up so he could see her eyes in the lamplight. "Every night for the rest of my life if that is what it took to keep you safe." "Let us hope it does not come to that," Zelda said with a soft laugh. "I much prefer being here, warm and safe in our bed." They drifted to sleep like that, wrapped in each other and in the promise of all the nights to come. The first weeks of marriage were an adjustment for both of them. Zelda had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings and hard physical work that was so different from the leisurely pace of her life in Carson City. But she threw herself into it with determination, learning to cook on the wood stove, tend the chickens, and manage the vegetable garden she started behind the house. Samuel, in turn, had to learn to share his space and his life after years of solitary existence. He had to remember to communicate his plans rather than just heading out for the day, to consider someone else's preferences when making decisions about the ranch. But these adjustments came easily, made smooth by the deep affection and respect they had for each other. Charlie became a regular fixture at their dinner table, drawn by Zelda's cooking and the easy warmth of their home. He taught her to ride properly, putting her on a gentle mare named Daisy and showing her the same patience he used with green colts. By late summer, Zelda could ride out with Samuel to check fences or move cattle, the two of them working side by side under the vast Nevada sky. They fell into patterns and created traditions. Saturday night baths in the big copper tub Samuel had bought. Sunday morning rides to church, followed by lazy afternoons reading together on the porch. Evenings spent planning improvements to the ranch, or simply talking about their days, while Zelda did mending and Samuel carved small wooden figures, a hobby she had recently discovered he had. Life was not without its challenges. There was a drought in August that had them worrying about water for the cattle. A cougar took down 2 calves before Samuel and Charlie managed to track and kill it. Zelda had a bout of illness in September that had Samuel pacing the floor in worry, until Doc Harrison confirmed it was just a bad cold and she would be fine with rest. But through it all, their love deepened and matured. The passionate fire of their courtship settled into something steadier and more enduring, a warmth that suffused their daily lives. They learned each other's moods and tells, developed their own private language of looks and touches. Samuel could tell when Zelda needed quiet companionship verses, when she needed to talk through whatever was on her mind. Zelda learned to read the subtle signs of tension in Samuel's shoulders that meant he was worried about money or the ranch, and knew how to draw those worries out so they could face them together. As autumn painted the mountains in gold and red, Zelda began to suspect she might be pregnant. She waited until she was certain before telling Samuel, choosing a moment when they were alone together in the barn, putting up the last of the hay for winter. "Samuel, I have something to tell you." He looked up from the bale he was positioning, immediately alert to the serious note in her voice. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right." She moved closer, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby. You are going to be a father." For a moment he just stared at her, his mouth slightly open, processing the information. Then suddenly his face split into the widest smile she had ever seen. He whooped with joy and spun her around, careful despite his enthusiasm. When he set her down, he immediately looked worried. "Should I not have done that? Did I hurt you? Or the baby?" Zelda laughed at his stricken expression. "We are fine. I am barely 2 months along, but yes, perhaps no more spinning for a while." He placed his hand back on her stomach, wonder in his eyes. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. In late April, I think, if my calculations are right." She covered his hand with hers. "Are you happy?" "Happy?" He pulled her close, tucking her head under his chin. "Zelda, I am beyond happy. I am terrified and thrilled and already so in love with this little one we made. Thank you for this gift." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Zelda had some morning sickness in the early months, but nothing severe. She continued to work around the ranch, though Samuel fussed over her constantly, trying to prevent her from doing anything strenuous. By December, when the snows began to fall and the anniversary of their meeting approached, her belly was starting to round noticeably. They celebrated Christmas quietly, just the two of them since the snow made travel difficult. Samuel had carved a beautiful cradle over the previous weeks, working secretly in the barn. When he presented it to Zelda on Christmas morning, she cried at the beauty of it, at the care evident in every smoothed edge and carved detail. "For our son or daughter," Samuel said, running his hand along the cradle's side. "The first of many children I hope we will have together." "Many," Zelda teased. "How many are you thinking?" "As many as you want to give me, as many as we can love and provide for." He knelt beside her chair and kissed her rounded belly. "But we will start with this one and see how it goes." January came, marking a year since Samuel had found Zelda in the mountain pass. They commemorated the anniversary quietly, both aware of how dramatically their lives had changed in that year. What had started with a desperate rescue had blossomed into a love story neither of them could have imagined. "Sometimes I still dream about that night," Zelda admitted as they lay in bed, Samuel's hand resting protectively on her belly. "I dream that you did not find me, that I died alone in the snow. But I did find you," Samuel said firmly, "and you are here, alive and safe and carrying our child. That is what is real, not the nightmares. I know, and then I wake up and see you beside me and I remember how lucky I am." She took his hand and guided it to where the baby was kicking. "Feel that?" Samuel's eyes widened with delight. "That is amazing. Is that normal? Is it supposed to be that strong? Apparently, we have a very active baby." Zelda smiled at his wonder. "Doc says everything is progressing perfectly. About 3 more months now. Those 3 months passed slowly and quickly all at once." Winter held the ranch in its grip, the world reduced to the house and barn and the daily chores necessary for survival. Samuel insisted Zelda stay inside on the coldest days, handling the outside work himself with Charlie's help. She spent those days cooking, sewing baby clothes, and reading every book about childbirth she could get her hands on. As March arrived with its promise of spring, Zelda grew uncomfortable and impatient, ready to no longer be pregnant. The baby seemed to have run out of room, every movement visible beneath her skin. Samuel was simultaneously fascinated and worried, hovering over her until she finally snapped at him to go find something to do outside before she lost her mind. He came back an hour later, sheepish and apologetic. "Charlie says I am being unbearable and he is going to tan my hide if I do not settle down." Despite her discomfort, Zelda laughed. "He is right. I love you dearly, but I cannot have you underfoot every second. I will be fine. Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. But not my woman, not carrying my child." He knelt beside her chair. "I cannot lose you, Zelda. The thought of anything happening to you terrifies me." Her heart melted at the vulnerability in his voice. She stroked his cheek gently. "I am strong, and Doc Harrison is experienced." And you will be right here with me. We will get through this together, just like we have gotten through everything else. Labor started on a rainy April morning, 2 weeks before Zelda's calculated due date. She was making breakfast when the first contraction hit, strong enough to make her grip the counter and breathe through it. Samuel, who had been coming in from the barn, took one look at her face and went pale. "Is it time?" "I think so." Another contraction followed close on the heels of the first. But these are coming very close together. That seems fast for a first baby. Samuel was already moving, helping her to the bedroom, sending Charlie racing to town for Doc Harrison. The labor was indeed fast, intense, with little break between contractions. Doc arrived barely an hour after it started, taking in the situation with one experienced glance. "This baby is in a hurry," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "Samuel, I need you to support your wife. Let her grip your hands as hard as she needs to." What followed was hours of pain and effort, with Samuel whispering encouragement and Doc providing calm guidance. Zelda had never experienced anything so difficult or primal. She screamed, she cried. She bore down with every ounce of strength she possessed. Samuel never left her side, letting her break his fingers if that was what she needed, telling her how strong she was, how proud he was, how much he loved her. And then, as afternoon light streamed through the window, a baby's cry filled the room. Zelda collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure, as Doc worked to clear the infant's airways. "You have a son," Doc announced with a smile, placing the cleaned and wrapped baby in Zelda's arms. "A healthy, loud son." Zelda looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and impossibly beautiful, and felt her heart expand to hold this new overwhelming love. Beside her, Samuel stared at their son with tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "He is perfect," Samuel whispered, his voice breaking. "Zelda, he is absolutely perfect." The baby had dark hair like his mother and already seemed to have his father's strong features. His eyes, when they opened, were the dark blue of all newborns, unfocused but alert. Zelda counted his fingers and toes, marveled at his tiny nails and the soft, downy hair on his shoulders. "What should we name him?" she asked, looking up at Samuel. "I was thinking about my father's name, Benjamin. But I want you to choose his first name, something from your heritage, maybe." Zelda considered this, thinking of her mother and the culture she had tried so hard to keep alive in Zelda's heart. "Santiago. It means St. James in Spanish. Santiago Benjamin York." "Santiago," Samuel repeated, testing the name. He reached out carefully to stroke his son's cheek. "Welcome to the world, Santiago. Your mother and I have been waiting to meet you." The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, of learning this new little person's needs and rhythms. Santiago proved to be a strong baby with healthy lungs, letting them know immediately when he was hungry, wet, or simply wanting to be held. Zelda was exhausted but suffused with joy, while Samuel walked around in a state of perpetual amazement that he had helped create this perfect little being. Charlie was a frequent visitor, bringing gifts of hand-carved toys and volunteering to hold the baby so Zelda could rest. The tough old cowboy had a surprisingly gentle touch with Santiago, singing him old trail songs in a creaky voice that somehow soothed the infant when nothing else would. "He is going to be tall like his daddy," Charlie pronounced one day, examining Santiago's long fingers. "And stubborn like his mama, I reckon." "A deadly combination," Zelda said with a laugh, taking her son back for his feeding. As spring turned to summer, Santiago grew and thrived. He started smiling at around 6 weeks, and Samuel would do anything to coax one of those gummy grins from his son. He fashioned a sling so Zelda could carry Santiago while working in her garden, talking to the baby constantly about the plants and the chickens and the wide Nevada sky above them. The ranch continued to prosper. Samuel had his biggest calf crop yet that spring, and the cattle were bringing good prices at market. With the additional income, he began to expand the house, adding a real bedroom for Santiago and enlarging the kitchen. He hired extra hands for the busy season, young men who could handle the routine work, while he focused on the bigger picture of building the ranch into something truly substantial. Zelda found her place in this life, becoming known in the area as a woman of substance and character. She started a small school in Rawhide that fall, teaching the children of ranchers and miners who otherwise would have had no education. Santiago, just 6 months old, would sleep in a cradle at the front of the classroom while she led her students through reading and arithmetic. The love between Samuel and Zelda only deepened with time. The passion was still there, but it was tempered now with partnership, with the deep trust and affection that came from building a life together. They had weathered challenges and celebrated triumphs, had brought a child into the world and raised him with love and laughter. On a warm evening in October, almost 2 years after Samuel had found Zelda in the snow, they sat on their porch watching Santiago toddle around the yard under Charlie's supervision. The little boy was walking now, into everything, fearless and curious about his world. "He is going to be a handful," Samuel observed with obvious pride. "He already is," Zelda agreed. "He gets that from you, I think, that fearlessness. And his stubbornness is all you." Samuel reached over and took her hand. "Have I told you lately how grateful I am? For you, for Santiago, for this life we have built. You show me every day," Zelda said softly. "In the way you kiss me goodbye each morning and hello each evening, in the way you are with our son, in the home you have built for us." "I want more of this," Samuel said. "More children, more years growing old together, more mornings waking up beside you. Is that greedy of me?" "Not greedy. Blessed." She squeezed his hand. "And as it happens, I think you are going to get your wish about more children." Samuel's head whipped around to stare at her. "You mean?" "I mean that Santiago is going to be a big brother sometime next spring." She watched delight spread across his face. "Are you happy?" Instead of answering, he pulled her close and kissed her thoroughly, only pulling away when Santiago's delighted shriek of "Mama, Papa" interrupted them. They looked over to see their son had managed to corner one of the chickens and was trying to hug it, while Charlie attempted to explain that chickens did not appreciate such affection. "I should rescue the chicken," Zelda said, but she was laughing too hard to move immediately. "Let Charlie handle it. He needs the practice. He is going to be around even more when the new baby comes." Samuel kept his arm around her. "Thank you, Zelda, for choosing me, for building this life with me. I know it is not fancy or easy." "It is real," she said, echoing words she had spoken almost 2 years ago during their courtship. "It is home. It is everything I never knew I needed until you saved my life." "We saved each other," Samuel corrected softly. "You gave me purpose beyond just surviving, a reason to build something lasting. You made this house a home." The years continued to pass, marked by growth and change and constant love. Their second child, a daughter they named Rosa Elena after Zelda's mother, arrived in April as predicted. She had her mother's olive skin and her father's green eyes, and from the first she was a daddy's girl, wrapping Samuel around her tiny finger with ease. Santiago proved to be a wonderful big brother, gentle with the baby despite his own young age. He was 4 when Rosa was born, old enough to help fetch diapers and sing the songs he had learned to soothe her crying. He followed Samuel everywhere, learning the ranch work with eager attention, already showing signs of becoming the kind of man his father was. The ranch grew to over 1,000 acres by 1880, one of the most successful in the region. Samuel had a reputation for fair dealing and quality stock, and other ranchers sought his advice. He never forgot where he came from, though, always willing to help a neighbor in need, always remembering what it was like to be starting out with nothing but determination and dreams. Zelda's school thrived, eventually requiring an actual schoolhouse that the community built together. She taught generations of children to read and write, to do sums and understand history. Many of her students went on to make something of themselves, and they always credited Mrs. York with giving them the foundation they needed. More children came. A third son, James, born when Santiago was 6. Twin daughters, Anna and Caroline, who arrived 3 years after James and turned the household into beautiful chaos. Each child was welcomed with joy, raised with love and discipline in equal measure, taught to work hard and treat others with respect. Through it all, Samuel and Zelda remained partners in every sense. They argued sometimes, as any couple did, but they always worked through it, never going to bed angry. They stole moments alone when they could, riding out to check distant fences and taking the long way home, sitting on the porch after the children were asleep to talk about their days and their dreams. Do you ever regret it? Samuel asked one night when they were both in their 40s, their children grown or nearly so. Staying here instead of going to California, building this hard life instead of an easier one. Zelda looked at him in genuine surprise. Not for one single moment. Samuel, you gave me everything I ever wanted. A home, a family, a purpose, adventures and challenges, and a love that has only grown stronger with time. Why would I regret any of that? I just want you to be happy, he said simply. That has always been my goal. From the moment I pulled you out of that snow, I am happy, deliriously, completely happy. She reached up to touch his face, lined now with the years but still so dear to her. You are my home, Samuel York. Wherever you are, that is where I belong. Santiago grew into a fine man, taking over more and more of the ranch operations as Samuel gradually stepped back. He married a sweet girl from Rawhide when he was 23, bringing her into the family with joy. They built a house on the far side of the ranch property, starting their own branch of the York family legacy. Rosa married a teacher who came to work at Zelda's school, a kind young man who loved books as much as she did. They moved to Carson City, where he taught at the university, but visited often, filling the house with grandchildren and laughter. James showed a talent for working with horses, breeding and training stock that was sought after throughout Nevada and beyond. The twins, inseparable as always, both became teachers like their mother, opening schools in other mining towns that desperately needed them. As Samuel and Zelda entered their 50s and then 60s, they found themselves blessed beyond measure. The ranch was prosperous and secure, their children successful and happy, grandchildren arriving regularly to fill their days with joy. They had weathered droughts and hard winters, fluctuating cattle prices and injuries. They had buried Charlie when he passed quietly in his sleep at age 78, mourning the loss of the man who had been like family to them. But through everything, their love remained constant. Samuel still looked at Zelda with the same wonder he had felt that night in the mountain pass, amazed that this remarkable woman had chosen him. Zelda still felt her heart skip when Samuel came in from working, still sought his counsel and valued his opinion above all others. They established traditions that the whole family came to cherish. Every February, on the anniversary of the day Samuel found Zelda, they would ride up into the mountains if weather permitted, just the two of them. They would stand in the pass where her life had changed, where their story had begun, and give thanks for the providence that had brought them together. I think about her sometimes, Zelda said one year when they were in their late 60s, looking out over the snowy landscape. The girl I was when I got on that stagecoach, so lost and scared with no idea what the future held. What would you tell her if you could? Samuel asked, his arm around her waist. I would tell her to be brave. That the worst moment of her life is about to become the best, because on the other side of that storm is a man who will love her beyond measure. I would tell her that she is stronger than she knows, and that she is about to build a life more wonderful than anything she could imagine. She leaned into Samuel's warmth. And I would tell her to trust the cowboy who wraps her in his coat, because he is going to give her the world. Samuel kissed her temple gently. And I would tell the young cowboy riding through that storm that he is about to find his purpose. That the woman he saves will save him right back, in all the ways that matter. That love is real and worth fighting for, and that the greatest adventure of his life is about to begin. They stood there for a long moment, two people who had grown old together, their love story written in the lines on their faces and the life they had built. Then they mounted their horses and rode back down the mountain, back to their home and family, back to the life they had created together. The years continued, as they always do. Samuel and Zelda eventually stepped back from active work, content to watch their children and grandchildren carry on the legacy they had started. They spent their days on the porch they had expanded over the years, holding hands and watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Do you remember, Samuel said one evening when they were both in their 70s, that first night I brought you to the ranch? How nervous I was that you would not like it. I remember thinking it was the most honest place I had ever seen, Zelda replied, her voice still strong despite her age. I remember feeling like I was finally home. You made it a home, Samuel said. Before you, it was just a house. Just logs and stone. You brought life and love and laughter. You brought our children. You brought meaning to everything I was building. We brought it together, Zelda corrected gently. Everything we have, we built side by side. That was the promise we made, remember. To be partners in all things. Best promise I ever made. Samuel raised her hand to his lips, kissing it with the same tenderness he had shown 50 years earlier. Best decision I ever made, riding through that storm to save you. Best decision I ever made, trusting you to bring me home safe. She looked at him, her eyes still bright despite the years. And you have kept me safe every day since. Safe and loved and cherished. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, surrounded by the life they had built. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family. Santiago had brought his grandchildren over for dinner, and the house rang with voices and laughter. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and enduring, ready to pass to another generation. I love you, Zelda York, Samuel said softly. I have loved you from that first moment, and I will love you beyond my last breath. I love you too, Samuel York, she squeezed his hand. My rescuer, my partner, my heart. Thank you for wrapping me in your coat and riding through the night. Thank you for bringing me home. As the stars began to emerge in the Nevada sky, they sat together. Two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would echo through generations. The story that had begun with a desperate rescue in a mountain pass had become something legendary, a tale their grandchildren would tell their own grandchildren someday. But for Samuel and Zelda, it was not a legend. It was simply their life, their love, the journey they had taken together from that frozen moment to this peaceful evening. They had been tested by hardship and blessed by joy, and through it all, they had held tight to each other and the promises they made. The mountain pass where Samuel had found Zelda was visible in the distance, a dark shadow against the star-filled sky. Somewhere up there, buried under decades of snowfall, were the memories of that desperate night. But here, on this porch in this home, surrounded by the family they had created, was the proof that sometimes miracles happened. Sometimes a cowboy found a woman half frozen in the snow, and sometimes that moment of salvation became the beginning of a love story that would last a lifetime. And as Samuel and Zelda York sat together in the fading light, their hands still clasped after more than 50 years of marriage, they knew with certainty that every frozen moment, every terrifying mile through the storm, every challenge they had faced together had been worth it. Because they had found in each other not just a partner or a lover, but the other half of their souls, the piece that made them complete. Their story was one of courage and survival, of building something lasting from nothing, of love that grew deeper and stronger with every passing year. It was a story worthy of the Wild West that had shaped them, as enduring as the mountains that had nearly claimed Zelda's life, but instead became the backdrop for their greatest adventure. And when Samuel and Zelda finally passed, within months of each other as couples who are truly bonded often do, they left behind a legacy of love that lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch that still bore the York name, in the memories of a town that had watched their romance unfold. The story of the cowboy who had wrapped a freezing woman in his coat and ridden through the night to save her became the stuff of legend in rawhide, told and retold with wonder at the love that had grown from such desperate beginnings. But the true measure of their story was not in the telling, but in the living. In 50-plus years of waking up beside each other, of working side by side to build something meaningful, of raising children with love and laughter, of growing old together with grace and gratitude. Their love story was written not just in the dramatic rescue that brought them together, but in every ordinary moment that followed, in every choice to love each other, even when it was hard, in every sacrifice made for their family, in every touch and word and shared glance that said more than speeches ever could. Santiago and his children ensured that Samuel and Zelda were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land they had built together. The headstone bore both their names and a simple inscription that Santiago chose. Together in life, together in death, together in love eternal. The ranch continued for generations, each new custodian adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation Samuel and Zelda had laid. And on February nights, when the wind howled down from the mountains, when snow fell thick and fast over the Nevada landscape, people would sometimes look up toward the high pass and remember the story of the cowboy and the woman he saved, and the love that had bloomed from that desperate night into something that would never fade. Because true love, the kind that Samuel and Zelda shared, does not end with death. It lives on in the legacy left behind, in the children who carry forward the values they were taught, in the land that was tended with care, in the memories cherished and stories passed down. Their love became part of the fabric of that place, woven into every fence post and building stone, echoing in every sunrise over the mountains where their story began. And so the tale of Samuel York and Zelda Garrison, of a cowboy who rode through a blizzard with a dying woman wrapped in his coat, of a love that started with salvation and grew into something legendary, became more than just a story. It became a testament to the power of courage and compassion, to the beauty that can grow from the darkest moments, to the enduring strength of two hearts joined in partnership and purpose. Their love story reminded everyone who heard it that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to the best, that salvation can come in unexpected forms, and that the truest love is not the passion of a moment, but the steady devotion of a lifetime. Samuel and Zelda had taken the gift of that second chance, that miraculous rescue, and transformed it into a life rich with meaning and joy and family and love that echoed through the generations. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for, to love and be loved in return, to build something lasting, to leave the world a little better than they found it. Samuel York and Zelda Garrison York had done all that and more, their story a beacon of hope and proof that true love, when nurtured and protected and chosen every single day, can weather any storm and last beyond a lifetime. The cowboy and his rescued bride had ridden through that terrible night into a dawn neither could have imagined, and in doing so, they had created something beautiful and enduring that would never be forgotten. Their love story, born in a mountain pass on a frozen February night in 1876, had grown into a legacy that would inspire generations, a reminder that the greatest adventures often begin with a single act of courage and compassion, and that the strongest love is forged not in easy times but in the challenges overcome together, hand in hand, heart to heart, for all the days of their lives.